Oh, this is the real deal.
I have to change up everything I was about to do, Joe.
Well, welcome everybody to the Iowa BizCast. This is our third season, if you will, our into our third year of doing these productions. The whole goal of this is to talk about business strategy, economic development, workforce development, really talking about all the great things that Iowa's largest companies are doing for the state of Iowa. Iowa Business Council members are focused every single day on making a better Iowa for every single Iowan, and we do that through our work at the state capitol in Washington D.C. and through thought leadership exercises, through our research and other capacities as well. And part of that is to share the story about our member companies and our member representatives. And today we're so pleased to have Jeff Lorenger, the chairman, president, and CEO of the HNI Corporation, to join us today on the first BizCast of 2025. Jeff has been a longtime member of the Iowa Business Council, longtime team member at HNI, and he's held a variety of different executive level positions in HNI's workplace furnishing brands, including Hahn, All Steel, Gunlock, HBF, Maxon, and HNI Global. He's uh, an Iowan. He went to the University of Iowa, got his law degree at the University of Iowa as well, and we are so fortunate to welcome Jeff to the webcast. Thanks for being with us, Jeff.
Great. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for the introduction. Glad to be here on this blustery day in Iowa.
It is. So for all of our attendees that are listening, many of whom are in Muscatine, we're aware that we're under a weather advisory, weather watch. So if we suddenly lose Jeff, thanks for tuning in, Jeff. We know that
Yeah,
it's
right.
a crazy day weather-wise. But Jeff, let's get right into it, and level set first on HNI as the organization and the corporation. The company was founded in Muscatine almost 80 years ago. The headquarters remains in Muscatine, which is fantastic. You're a publicly traded company. Give us a brief history of the organization, and where do you see HNI going in the decades to come?
Yeah, right, Joe. You are correct. This is a company that was founded. Well, actually, the three founders, Max Stanley, Clem Hansen, and H. Wood Miller, started talking about founding a company in 45. And I think it was originally, there's some discrepancies, but we kind of acknowledged 47 as the founding. And the reason I relate back to 45 is because they wanted to found a company because they were worried about, at the time, the boys coming home from World War II, and they were going to need jobs. And so their intent was, we need to form a company so people will have a job. So they didn't even know what they were going to make, but they knew their goal was, we need to provide jobs. And so it's an important story because it kind of talks about who we are and who we've been from the get-go, which is, it was focused on people, the veterans that were coming home. They started, their first name was called Homonize, and they started with recipe boxes, little metal recipe boxes, and metal kitchen cabinets in the 50s. And that's where the company started. Then they expanded into filing cabinets. That was the sole product for many years, is to file paper. And then they expanded further from that into, core office furniture, and it just went from there. And then in the 80s, they got into the hearth market. They bought a business that was in Mount Pleasant, Iowa. Also, Iowa-based. The company had gotten into some trouble, and the Stan Howe, the CEO at the time, 50 years in the CEO chair, wasn't a founder, but was basically one of the first employees hired, became a longstanding CEO. Figured, it's a fireplace, it's a metal box. We make metal. We do metal boxes, for filing. So let's get into fireplaces. So that's a little funny story. And today we're still in both businesses, and office and fireplaces. And then we just kept expanding through the 80s. And in 2023, we made a large acquisition of a company in Indiana that is also in the office space. And you talk about where we're going to go. We still make file cabinets. for paper, but as you well know, the digital age hit.
Yep.
And so what we try to do is we just continue to evolve and look at where the market's going, where our customers are going, what people are going to need. And part of what the Kimball acquisition did is bring us into two markets we'd never been into, which is healthcare and hospitality. So, that's really the founding. And I think it's important to note too that the company paid profit sharing before they ever paid dividends. And so when they made their first buck, they paid the profit sharing to the members before they started paying dividends to the shareholders. And to this day, we still pay profit sharing and dividends, to both. So that's really who we are, and it's a great Iowa company. It's a great story, and we love being in Iowa, and we love the members. We were also called people members before that became kind of maybe a term of art with some people or associates. There were never employees; they were members from the 1950s or 40s.
That's an incredible description, particularly coming out of World War II, right? And trying to look at trying to create opportunities for Iowans, and that's what you continue to do here in 2025. Really, really fantastic stuff. So as we think about manufacturing and what you do as an organization, manufacturing, as you all know, listening, is Iowa's #1 industry, and obviously HNI is a key component of that. What are some of the challenges associated with manufacturing, particularly with the office furniture and residential side of things, as both of those markets, and you know better than I, have cooled recently with hybrid or remote work and even the softening of the U.S. housing market?
Yeah, well, there's a couple things first that I'll stack on it before we get to the current, which is, our manufacturing is made to order manufacturing. And so particularly in the office side. So we don't set up and run big runs of similar stuff. It's made to order because it's highly specified fabrics, finishes, paint colors. And so if you think about that, you have to be pretty flexible, pretty versatile, number one. Number two, you don't just set up a new line. You have to really kind of do the work and engage the process, because new products require new processes, and then you factor in some of the automation that needs to be feathered in, all while running your core business. So that's kind of how we operate. And then to your question around what's been going on, I mean, the office has been in a major disruption. COVID hit, and everybody scattered for home. And one thing we did is we took that time to improve our business. That's what we worked to improve the business, because when you're going 100 miles an hour, sometimes it's hard to make some of those improvements. So we always said, don't waste the crisis. Let's improve the business, and that's what we've been doing. Now, so that's how we kind of dealt with it, and we actually made the business stronger, even though the market demand was down. Now, what's occurred since then is the market has started to come back to life. People started coming back into the office. It's geographically based to some extent, based on where you're located, size of business. The headline news is really the major metro center core cities, but there's a lot of activity that's going on, in other places, in the country. And so we've really just been engaging with customers and it's changing. I mean, individual work sometimes now will be done at home, but the bottom line is companies realize the ability to connect and create and have innovation takes people together. I just was reading an article last night. Literally, I thought about speaking to you today, and there was a guy at the University of Iowa named Craig Kleitzig. I don't know. He got the largest grant a few years ago from NASA to launch satellites. And in fact, they're due to launch here shortly. I knew him personally. He unfortunately passed away from cancer in the middle of the project. The whole article is about how the team came together, but it's an incredible story. They had people on this, from all over the country, and they did their work there, but they could not put these things together and get them to NASA to sign off on them in space without bringing people together. Yeah. And so that's really what we're seeing with our customers and clients, more and more realizing that the competitive advantage of having their groups together in the office, structured in the right way in order to do the work as a team, is important. So that's really what we're doing. It's important to the value proposition, and that's the office side. On the fireplace side, to your point, you're right. The housing market, we're kind of tale of two, post-pandemic. Housing went crazy in the pandemic while office was down. Now office is coming back, and housing is kind of in the dumps with interest rates and affordability and whatnot. So we've done the same thing. We've used it to improve the business. During this time, continue to invest in the business. That's one thing I would also say about HNI. We're in it for the long pull. We've been around 80 years. We are a publicly traded company, but our investors understand we take the long view. We invest for the long term. And we're starting to see positive signs, green shoots, so to speak, with mortgage rates stabilizing. People want to buy houses, family formation. The supply demand is still a challenge, but the long-term prospects of housing we're bullish on. And so that's what we're doing.
That's really, really interesting. And proof is in the pudding. You've got that long-term outlook, that long game approach, and that's why you've been such a successful organization for going on 80 years, which is pretty incredible. And so as you've navigated those challenges, and you mentioned this before talking about your team members, HNI has been a leader where it matters most. Newsweek has named HNI as one of the most responsible companies in 2024. Your organizational culture is centered around a notion of rapid continuous improvements, which sets, I think, a solid foundation for your long-term success. Can you provide a little bit more detail on how you approach culture within the organization, and why is that so important to you as a leader and to the organization overall?
Yeah, look, I mean, first of all, we rally around our vision, which is pretty simple. We as member owners, and we always use that, exist to enhance where people work, live, and gather. Sounds kind of highfalutin, but it's really pretty simple. We are in the office where you work, we're at the home where you live, and where you gather, whether it be hospitality or I got a train coming through right now, so everyone, hopefully locals will understand we have tracks right outside the office. So that's it starts with the vision, and then we're guided by some core beliefs that have been around for this entire time, and that stuff is really what makes the culture. And so it's relentless focus on our customers. It's shared responsibility, shared rewards. That goes back to this profit sharing. It's fairness and respect. It's positive impact of the planet, integrity without compromise, and a community for everyone. And those are the ingredients in the core beliefs. And every day people work on, living those beliefs out. And one of the things you mentioned is rapid continuous improvement. It's been around forever. It's ebbed and flowed. We've had periods where we've been strong at it, where we've kind of atrophied a bit, but it's always been in the DNA. And so what it really does is it engages people in a team effort to solve problems. And it becomes kind of the oxygen that the organization needs. And it's pretty cliche to say problems are opportunities. There's some version of that floating around almost everywhere. But we really to our core live that and believe it. And we admire a problem only in the sense that it gives us something to work on and to improve on. And so that's been with us from the beginning, and it really is another foundational way that we can live out our beliefs through this problem solving approach. And I would just say that the members of HNI, people ask me this when I first started. I don't talk about it as much anymore, but it's like, what happens if somebody doesn't fit in? And it's like, well, that happens from time to time, but our culture is pretty strong, and people generally opt in through that process. They see that process, they want to be here. So it doesn't happen very often, but when it does happen, we're a very Iowa-based, nice company. People just kind of move around you. They just kind of manage around and solve the problem. They don't really get too hung up about whether someone's getting it done or not. And then eventually someone just realizes, well, geez, I better get in the game. So it kind of self-medicates. And I really like that about HNI. I've always, it's one of the things that attracted me to it is just culturally, it's about getting the work done, the job done in a way that is pure, uh, as opposed to a lot of pomp and circumstance.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting perspective on that. And I think you're totally right. I want to switch gears and talk about the workforce in general and what it means to be possibly a good candidate or a profile of a candidate for a job at HNI. So as you know, Jeff, we spend a lot of time at our business council meetings each quarter talking about creating a thriving workforce in Iowa. And HNI has been a tremendous leader in cultivating that workforce through your partnerships with your local school districts, your community colleges, and other partnerships as well. What sort of successes have emerged from your partnerships with the educational systems in particular? And what would you tell other businesses to do to get started in this space?
It's a good question. First of all, everybody, what I would say about that, Joe, is just everyone kind of has to know their business and their community. And there's nuances to every community and how people work. So what we do may work, may not work, depending on where you're at. But first of all, I would tell you, we have a strong internship program just as a base case. We have these other things too, but we hire roughly 100 interns every summer, 70 of them which are based in Iowa, so a nice healthy number. And in the other thing we try to do, we provide, it's real work. It's to this, you're either on an RCI team, you're solving a real customer problem, maybe not on your own, but as part of a team. And so that's what we try to do. And then we try to stay connected with those interns as they depart, go back to school. And we're doing more of assigning work to them if they want to make some money, and it's a good way to stay connected with them. So that's kind of foundational. And then we have apprenticeships. We are in manufacturing. We look at apprenticeships to kind of, we call it earn as you learn, and bring people in that can work part-time, earn some money, and learn some of these skilled, high-tech, more automated, manufacturing type jobs and see if it's for them. And so the apprenticeship program has been really strong for us. And then project-based learning, we do specific projects with various, even high schools, and colleges and community colleges that assign a specific project with a specific timeline and a specific outcome. And that's another different way that we connect with people. They learn about us, we learn about them, and they can make some money. And it's just a really good way to get people exposed to what we do over here in Eastern Iowa. And then externships, we have had teachers, we generally try to have a teacher a semester or every summer, a couple teachers come in and work. And it's a great way for them to get exposure and then go back to the classroom and talk about it, what their experience was, which then can maybe feed to some of the other apprenticeships and, things of that nature. So that's what we do. Again, I think we've had periods of time where it's been super successful and other times where it hasn't been. But what I would say is consistency and approach in all these programs and being there kind of through thick and thin and staying with the program is what's most important, both for our members internally and for those schools and or community organizations that we're connected to.
Yeah, and I think you guys do a great job, the tone is set at the top, right? From your chair, and you empower your team, whether it's Mandy or Jen or others on your team, to go out into the communities and establish these relationships and support them to do the good work that's feeding your future workforce, which I think is a good model to adapt if you're a different company or even a competitor of yours.
100%. And it's another way, it's an intangible way to how we help also support the community, which is important to us. But it's a two-way street, and it's not for everybody. But look, I mean, that's why I say sometimes we'll have years where we're busting at the seams and other times not so much. But it's like everything in business. Sometimes your business is up, sometimes it's down. I mean, but the consistent approach and the focus is what's important in this area for us.
Right. Well, and speaking of business, there's always something new in the industry, whether it's, advanced manufacturing or biosciences or anything else. But one thing that's definitely continuing to pop up, or the way we do business, whether that's because of AI or innovative manufacturing practices. And when you think about the type of person that you're looking to hire in the future, what's the profile of a type of employee that you think will be the most successful in this constantly changing environment that we find ourselves in today?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in some respects, it hasn't changed for, I don't believe, but it's someone who is curious,
Yeah.
someone who is agile and open-minded, just has a lot of intuitive kind of curiosity about things, because there is not a lot of set in place and forget jobs anymore like there used to be. It's team based, it's project come and go, technology, so foundation, being open-minded, being curious, and then the ingredients that you always come back to, which is hard work and communication. I mean, I think communication is an area that we look for, whether it be verbal, written. It's hard not to be it's hard to be really successful not being able to communicate. So that's really kind of what we look for. People who are raise their hand for assignments. And I think that even in today's world, as things have evolved, that's even more important. I would say on the AI front, that's an interesting, I mean, it's crazy. It's a Wild West. Our philosophy on AI is experimentation, test and learn, figure out, have some very structured scenarios where we're working on to see, okay, we think this will work. And then a lot of free floating trial, just to have people who have, what I said, curiosity and want to be involved. Why don't you go try this, or try whatever you want and come back and we'll have a roundtable and see if it worked. So we don't want to be too clinical about it at this point, because things are so dynamic. So that's kind of been our approach on the AI front, because it's going to continue to evolve. And so we've just tried to say, hey, we want to get some tangible outcomes, but we don't know what we don't know. I have many people that do know. What I do know, and what I'm convicted in, though, is AI is not a substitute for creativity and the human side of things. And that's why these traits are so important, because if you have those traits, you're going to be able to get the most out of AI. But yet you're going to need to, do your part. And the human side of this is always going to be important. And so, I think if you have critical thinking, in your open RCI, for instance, as I think about RCI, okay, an RCI event is usually in advance of an RCI, you pull data. You have to get the data so that you can set the goals and task the team and say, okay, here's what we're trying to do this week. Well, that's a classic case. AI, maybe you can use AI to maybe more structure the data, get it quicker, get it organized sooner. So that's a way the AI can creep into the core RCI process, but yet you got to bring the people in and then work the process. So that's an example in our business, how AI and yet the human and teamwork come together to enhance the process.
Really, really interesting. And I think you listed in some way or another all four of our Iowa Business Council professional proficiencies that we studied over the course of the last fall, and continue to work with our educational partners to make sure that the future workforce is lined up on those items. I want to come back to some of the community support that HNI provides. You've mentioned it. I mentioned it again at the top. It's your company is a fantastic community supporter in the Muscatine area, and in your other locations across the state and country. I've read that HNI has provided more than $7 million to HNI team members and their families over the last 20 years in the form of scholarships. In addition to that, since 2019, the company has contributed more than $3 million to local community organizations, while also providing volunteer time off to your team members so they can go out and get involved and contribute their time to benefit the community, why is it important for a company like yours to go above and beyond in supporting these types of community-based initiatives? And why should other companies, whether it's in your area or other areas around the state, follow your lead?
Well, look, I think it's just, look, we're in such an ecosystem. We always have been, but it's more important today than ever. The, private public partnerships, community support. We want to give back, and we want to support where we work, where we live, where we play. I mean, the ecosystem is so important, and it's now more than ever. And so, we think that trying to improve, and we can't do everything, but pick a few key areas that are important to the community and important to our members. That's the other thing. I mean, those two things should hopefully be connected. And a couple areas we focus on are health and wellness and education. Those are kind of we try to stay focused in those areas. And recently we've done some big contributions to a local new clinic in Muscatine, a new sports complex in Muscatine. You mentioned education. We continue to do that for our members. We also support the universities. We've done projects with UNI, Iowa State. We're in discussions with Iowa right now for something. And so, it's just the ecosystem in which we kind of operate, and we want to be a contributor, a positive contributor to that, because we clearly benefit from it as well, whether it be the members we employ, the recruiting we do, the services we take advantage of. So we always, it's been since the founding, we want to focus on where our members are at and add to the pie if we can. And so we started a charitable foundation in '85. There was a lot of work done before that. It was just more kind of ad hoc. We tried to get more organized around it, and we meet formally at the foundation, and we take requests and we look at them, and they try to fit the charter. Not all of them do. And, plus people like to engage.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody, but it's for a lot of people. Our members like to engage in projects that are local. And it's a great thing. It's a key way to keep the cultural oxygen in the room as well. And it's fun to do, to be candid.
Yeah.
I mean, it's people enjoy it. It's balance, brings balance to your life as well, and to what we do every day.
It feeds into your culture, right? It feeds into that thriving and successful culture that you've been a part of for a long time.
100%.
So we're into the last set of questions, and admittedly they're a bit more personal, but our viewers and folks online are very interested, Jeff, in how leaders of organizations structure their day, channel their intake of news, other things, how you generally stay on top of all of the things that you're responsible for, while still carving out some Jeff time. So let's just start off. You're in a different place, maybe multiple times a week, but what's your ideal morning routine? When do you wake up? When do you get to the office? If you're even at your office that day, maybe you're going somewhere else. But how do you structure your morning in a way that leads to a successful day for you, no matter where you're at in the country or in the world?
Sure. Well, it does vary a little bit depending where I'm at. If I'm home and I'm going to come in the office, I usually get up, I don't know, 6 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock, scroll through a little online stuff, go down, brew the coffee. I'm a coffee guy, so I do coffee, little Wall Street scan at home, quick breakfast, and then I have about a 40-minute commute, so I usually hit CNBC a little bit. I do BBC a little bit, just to catch some world, see what's going on in the world news. And that's really it. That's my routine. I like to, one thing I do is I organize. I'm kind of a list maker, so I will organize. I found in this role, prepping, it's always important to prep, but I can add more value and be more have a higher quality day or week or month if I stay ahead of things and I'm not running by the seat of my pants. So what I try to do in the morning is say, okay, what do I have today? What do I have tomorrow? What do I have this week? so I can kind of scope out my time. And sometimes I carve out time at home. I'll schedule time at home, kind of like this whole thing to make sure I don't get interrupted and get that done before I get to the office. And other times, it just depends on the meeting schedule and whatnot. So that's really the routine. Coffee, a little bit of newspaper, and a little bit of work for to make sure I understand that I try not to act surprised when I walk into meetings and say I didn't know I was supposed to have this meeting. So little organization for me goes a long way.
Well, that's good to know, and that's a great way to start the day. But in your role as CEO, you've got things flooding your inbox all the time. You got to stay informed on business news in general, topics that are either specific to the business world or your industry, the community that we talked about. You mentioned you start your day looking at the news. Is that a constant drip of industry reports, other things that you're looking at? What's your flow of info into you look like?
Yeah, look, I sift a lot of it out, but I'm part of our trade association, so I'll read that stuff. I read your stuff. I proved that earlier when we were chatting. No, I try to stay abreast of things that are impactful to us here in Iowa or in the industry. So, I get weekly letters from various groups that I'll scan. Some of it I sift through. I don't do it every week, but it's really pick and choose, but I have more than enough to look at. So I generally look at a few industry pubs, and then the national news. That's really kind of where I get my oxygen, so to speak. And then the nice thing about the commute is I can catch up there with the radio stations here, with the satellite radio these days. You can be pretty tuned in, going from and to work. You get a little decompression, on the way home, but you still can pick up if you missed anything, during the day, if you were buried in meetings. That's what I generally try to scan the news channels to see if I missed anything.
It's a great point. Yeah, and you do have one of the longer commutes of an Iowa Business Council member, I'm assuming too. So that's good. That's good good use of windshield time.
Right. It is.
So Jeff, no judgment here in these next couple of questions, but what book are you currently reading, or maybe a book that you've recently finished that you would be willing to recommend in a public format?
Well, this is going to sound, if anybody goes and gets this book, they're going to think they may think I've lost my mind a little bit, because it kind of looks like a kid's book, but it's called The Imagination Emporium. It's picked it up at a conference the guy spoke at. The guy's name is Duncan Wardle, Wardle. He's the former head of innovation and creativity at Disney. And his whole premise, it's not like any other business book that you would look at. His whole premise is imagination. And, when we were kids, our imagination would, you'd imagine anything. And then as you go on in life, you get boxed in, and you lose some of that, and it kind of dampens your ability to be creative. And it kind of goes through how you can break out of that and do different things the way they did at Disney to not constrain yourself in your imagination and your creativity. And it's just and it's set up in a way with exercises and kind of cartoon characters, because it's Disney, and this guy, but it's fascinating to me, when you're talking to somebody and they come up with an idea, you say yes and, as opposed to I'm not sure, or we've done that before. You just automatically say yes and then extend it, even if it's kind of a crazy idea, because you're not, you don't constrain yourself. So it's a different spin on innovation and creativity than I've ever seen in a lot of the business books. So I think it's hitting the mark for me. So it's a very fun and engaging book.
That's a great recommendation. We'll add it to the IBC book club. That's
there
great.
There you go. Good.
All right. Again, no judgment here, but is there anything that you're binge watching on Netflix or Amazon Prime or Hulu that you would want to recommend to others?
I've done I got a list so long that I'm not caught up to, Joe. And I've got a bunch that I've watched that now are, waiting for season, so, but I like The Diplomat.
Yeah.
Um, I liked Landman, and more one of the more fun ones I'm just started again. I didn't realize that it got season 3 started again. It's called The Wheel of Time. It's more of a fantasy. It's books by Robert Jordan. I read them when I was a kid, and
Mhm.
Amazon picked it up. And it's a classic case of it's not near as good as the books, but it's a pretty interesting series if you've read the books. If you haven't, my wife's trying to watch it with me. She's a bit lost, but and there's a bunch of others, but it's there's a lot of good stuff out there. There's a lot of good content out there, depending on what your genre is, so to speak. But I like The Diplomat, Landman, and I'm doing The Wheel of Time.
That's good. That's good. Last question in the lightning round. What's the most important thing a leader can do in today's world?
Well, look, this is one person's opinion, but I'm a big believer right now in just trying to stay calm.
Mhm.
Um, there's a lot of stress in the system, and whether it's all your stakeholders, not the least of which are your members slash employees for some, you just try to stay calm and control what you can control and focus on what you can control. And if history is if you got a track record, you can drive right through. And I think that's what I try to do is we all can get excited, and there's a lot of stressors in life, and it's chaos is kind of the new normal to some extent in the business world. But I think the number one thing is stay calm and control what you can control. And that's a pretty good recipe no matter what's going on.
That's great advice. That's really good advice. I'm gonna channel that mantra here in the last 7 weeks or so of the legislative session here.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So,
See if it works for you, right?
I'll report back at our Q1 meeting.
All
But no,
right, good.
that's really good. Uh, Jeff Lorenger, the chairman, president, CEO of HNI Corporation, a great partner in the community, in the state, in the industry, a great Iowa Business Council member. Jeff, thanks so much for being with us today. Any final words you'd like to leave us with today?
No, look, I just think, embrace, my final word is embrace change, whether it's professionally or personally. Change is all around us. It's like I said, it's the new normal. Embrace it. It's the world we live in, and it's not, it can be scary, but it's not going away. So kind of make it an opportunity. And I think glass half full kind of thing.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Jeff, thanks so much for being with us today. We're glad that the weather held up on both of our ends, and for
Yes.
everybody watching, thanks so much for tuning in. Stay safe, and we'll look to distribute this later on this week. So thanks
All
again,
right.
Jeff. Really appreciate you.
Great. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Happy to
All
do
right.
it.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.